And I found that actually, although Martha was a fantastic and is an exquisite painter, had a lot of impact, even if they were, quote unquote, only a vase of flowers.
Mm-hmm. They're stunning.
Oh, thank you.
Now, share with us some of the traditional painting techniques, particularly in portraiture, that you incorporate into your work. Do you start it with a prematura and then do a sketch in oil?
I think it's an extremely important issue, the surfaces that you work on. So I spend a lot of time preparing the canvas to get a surface that I like. And then when I have that surface, a lot of the issues in the way the painting will look depend on the surfaces. In other words, I can get the drawing to be accurate, I can get the lighting to be accurate, I can even get the color and things like that to be accurate, but I want the touch to be accurate. I want the touch to be right. And so that tactile quality, this is all stuff you can't see in reproductions, but when you see paintings in person, there's a huge difference between them in the hand, in the work, mm-hmm. and the tactile property of the work. And that's my favorite thing to fuss with. So yeah, I spend a lot of time with the underpainting and with the actual physical surface of the painting.
Where do you find your inspiration?
Well, that's a hard question. As a figurative painter, I would say, you know, and speaking more generally, it just has always been I think it's historically a very interesting thing to see how humans imagine themselves, how they depict themselves, or how they envision humans, and that's the story of art to me in a certain way. I mean, if you look at cave paintings, or if you look at Egyptian paintings, you look at Greek 5th century art, you look at Renaissance painting, you look at 20th century Expressionism. It's that the human reflection is always very, very intriguing, and that's what intrigues me. And to find a way to make a sensible image, an image that is true now, is, I think, the problem.
And the solution.
I hope to suggest a solution.
How has the Tapestry Commission changed your life?
Well, it's changed my life in the sense that I've had a very steady life in a certain way, because I've had a steady job for a couple of years. This is great. And that's been nice. But you know, it's kind of a dream project in the sense that, you know, it's a fantasy to do a big, especially for a church, it's kind of a Sistine Chapel kind of thing, you know. And to actually be doing something like that is sort of mind-boggling. So in that sense, it's the fulfillment of I think, a very common idea that little young artists always have of doing this kind of great project.
Talk about the perspective of the figures and why they're so unique.
Well, it isn't unique in the sense that it's a technique that's been used before, but it's to sort of destroy the perspective, because one of the limitations of drawing in classic Renaissance perspective is that it locates the viewer in space. And it's okay when you're looking at a small easel painting or something like that. But when you're in a large space that you're moving around and viewing the art from different vantage points, it can look very odd if it doesn't agree with the perspective, the view of the image. The other idea was that I liked the idea of a frieze, and I wanted the images to lay very flat on the wall. And so that idea came from monumental Egyptian painting and lots of other work like this, where Pier della Francesca does this, for example, where you have multiple eye levels. And so everything is done at eye level, so the feet were done right at eye level, and the knees and the elbows and the hands and the faces. So as a result, everything is depicted flat to the wall like an architectural elevation. It's like the difference between looking at a blueprint of a building and a photograph of a building. You know, the one looks like this little flat silhouette, and the other thing looks like this zooming up wedge. So that was the idea we used. And then as a result, you could change the scale. You could have them higher, have them lower, and move them around, and they still looked right. So that was the idea on the perspective.
Now, did you paint your family and friends in the various figures?
Yes. Yes, they were available models, and so a few of them ended up in there, yeah.
Did you have trouble getting models?
We had to get so many people so fast that it was a little bit of a problem. And I hired a casting director named Serena Hausman, who's a wonderful person and very talented at being able to find people, and which she did for, Bernardo Bertolucci and me. So she helped me as well. And we would have almost weekly input from the Archdiocese about this list of people who we would have to depict, and that was evolving. And as it would evolve, we'd say, "Oh, who's this person?" And we'd have to do research. I had people working on that too, and we'd find out that this person was a 12-year-old Japanese boy, for example. And then we have to find somebody who would work. And somebody else was an 80-year-old French nun, and we have to find somebody who would work.
Have you ever contemplated the fact that these tapestries are going to be around for hundreds of years?
Well, I really, I don't really think about that very seriously. In the requirement is that they be made of very durable materials and that they be made to last for hundreds of years. Everything about the cathedral project is spec'd to last literally hundreds of years. So they're clearly thinking about that issue. And it's sort of an awesome thing to imagine that. However, I know enough that a lot of things can happen along the way. If you travel in Europe, you see tons of instances in which art is covered up by other art in churches. For example, in Florence, where I lived, there are frescoes by Giotto, and these are now considered to be some of the most important things that were ever done. And somewhere around the 1600s, they decided to mount some tombs on top of them, and they chipped them away, and they hung a big marble box right over the paintings. So what will really happen with these pieces is hard to know, but the joy in doing it is just doing the project. It's not, I can't obsess too much about them being around for a long time. And you're so swept up. Also, when you're working on them, you can't think about it. You're so busy thinking about just getting the job done.
What practical advice would you give students?
Well, I think that if you really love something, it's that the Joseph Campbell thing of following your bliss, following the thing that interests you and that compels you. Art is not always an easy thing to survive at. If you're going to be a painter and you want to be a figurative painter, then it's an old saw, but you just have to learn to draw, and you have to study drawing, you have to love drawing. You have to have some chops. So drawing is fundamental, I think.
Gee, I want to just thank you for allowing us the time to sit with you and talk with you. It's absolutely an honor.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Oh, thank you, John.
Sure, absolutely.